Okay, welcome back. I hope you had a nice lunch break. We start again with another a way into STURTEVANT's work and the exhibition at the Serpentine Gallery with Rebecca Lewin, who is assistant curator at the Serpentine Gallery and also a curator in the world, whose work who worked also very closely with the rest of the curatorial team on making the exhibition that you will have seen, or I would encourage you to see. So thanks very much, Rebecca.
Thank you, Lucia, and thanks everyone for ducking out of the lovely sunshine. My talk is really going to be, in true STURTEVANT style, a virtual tour of the exhibition. We quite regularly give tours and talks through the space, and are always challenged when an artist refuses to be helpful to us as tour guides by just having pictures on the walls. And this show, if you've been, you'll know that there's an incredible array of sounds and moving images that are very difficult to compete with if you're giving a tour. So this is a virtual tour of the exhibition and a little bit of context about how we put the show together, really. The show, as you know, is entitled STURTEVANT Leaps, Jumps and Bumps. And she made an incredible analogy quite early on when she chose the title, that the leaps are the sort of conceptual part of the work, the jumps are the way that you have to move around the space, and the bumps are the problems, really, the challenges that the work kind of presents the viewer with. So there's a joke there for her, and she refers actually to it in previous conversations, leaps and jumps, in the way that she anticipates viewers understanding her work. My sort of personal title for talking to you about it is articulating visibilities, which is a term that she uses, or spot the owl, which you will understand if you've already seen the show. So this is the first room that you come into, and it's in the what we call the South Gallery. And it's a combination of two works, or possibly one and a bit works. The main thing is the work by Felix González Torres, which you can see in the center of the room. And I say by Felix González Torres because there's this, as you know, great interplay between what we say is hers and what we say is something that she's appropriated from other artists. And the lovely thing for the Serpentine to have this work of hers in the space is that it was included in an exhibition of Felix González Torres' work about 6 or 7 years ago. Unfortunately, it's not in exactly the same place, but it is repeated from an earlier exhibition as well as repeated from an earlier artwork, which is quite a nice conceptual link. You'll also see the wallpaper, which was a decision that she made completely in response to the gallery when she was on site. And you'll spot it in lots of other works throughout the show, so it's something to keep an eye out for. This is a close-up, so you can see the way that the owl wallpaper's been sort of layered, and interestingly, the idea of the repeat, which comes up again and again and again, is in the step and repeat pattern, which is repeated over and which comes up in other artworks. So the eye stock image that Elisa mentioned earlier, and this is one of several eye stock images that she uses, appears originally in Elastic Tango of 2010, and you also see an image of that. But it gets reused for this work that's projected on the wall on the right of the image, which is Rock and Rap, Act 3, Simulacra. And I wanted to make a note at this point, and probably again when I'm talking through more of the works, about the importance of titles in her work. There's already been quite a good exploration of the way that she's interested in concept and theory, and the importance of text and communication in both revealing and kind of obscuring the meanings and the ways to understand her work. And my kind of experience of her talking about it was that she applied that very much to the way that she titled the works in the show. And this one I particularly like because it kind of combines every possible way that we can understand her work. The rock and rap is this constant use of humour, which reappears. Is she talking about using rap as a mechanism for sort of sampling? Is she talking about rock and roll in terms of this sort of slightly sexy, glossy, glazed finish of many of her video works? The Act 3, there's another work, I think is the next one, which is called Act 1, and they are both excerpts from Elastic Tango, which she describes, if I just flick through, I'll come back to it, here we are, as a 3-act video play on 9 monitors. So I'm going to go back to this one. The theatrical elements of the way that she puts the work that she makes into spaces and the theatricality of the works themselves are actually bound up and kind of displayed to us in this discrete way in the titles of the works. To go back through the show, Dillinger Running Series, which was explained so eloquently by Elisa, is in the Central Gallery, and as you can see, this is the largest space in Serpentine. We've got a double height roof. It can be quite a challenge for artists to work with that space, and as Elisa said, the consciousness that you have of the space as a space is quite singular. It really draws attention to the dimensions, to the ratio and the proportion of your own body in relation to the entire building in a way that's quite dizzying, actually, because you become more and more aware of it the more that you attempt to follow this image, which actually moves very, very quickly to a very fast soundtrack. So you begin to turn in the same way that the image turns, that the artwork is turning, and you become implicated in it. She talks a lot about, in a pessimistic way, about the empty, vast, barren interior, are her words, to describe the sort of contemporary mindset, one that ingests billions and billions of images every minute, waking moment, and tries to discard them. And as Fabienne pointed out, it's often difficult to successfully do that. So we're constantly absorbing things without questioning where they've come from, without questioning who's presented them to us. Therefore, her aim in producing any work of art is to make the viewer think, whether it's about the way that the artwork has been made, whether it's about their own perception of the artwork. And again, we come back to the titling of the artwork. In something like Warhol Diptych, she's implicated herself, because she is obviously the artist, and she's implicated Warhol at the same moment by including his name in the title of the work that she has remade. So it becomes this sort of cyclical process of both looking at an image, looking at an object, and looking at yourself, looking at the image. Because when you come to it and you're thinking that's a Warhol, you then have to step back and challenge your own understanding and your own preconceptions. This is another sort of slightly different angle of the same room. And from left to right, we have 6 of a series of Duchamp Fresh Widows, which were actually made last year. And in addition to the owls that reappear throughout the show, we have works that are remakes of her own remakes. So she's repeating herself, repeating someone else. You get the feeling that she might end up keeping on doing this in a sort of cyclical spiral. You're not quite sure how it will end. But the Duchamp Fresh Widows are accompanied to the right there by a Pac-Man video, which is a very short excerpt of highly sped up little Pac-Man animation that keeps eating itself. We have the Trilogy of Transgression, and although it's not visible on the flip side of that group of monitors, Blowjob. And both of those are, I would say, have more of the humour that I was talking about earlier than many of the other works in this room, at least. They are poking fun at the highly sexualized imagery that we often associate with the internet, with appropriated videos, with found documents, with pornography that is sort of has been bound up as a sort of axis of evil. The internet and pornography seem to be going hand in hand in the way that media hype sort of reads to us about the way that we interact on the internet. And Blowjob is a sniggering mouth from Beavis and Butthead, interspersed with her mouth blowing, just breath coming out. So it's her joke about that, I think. And the trilogy of transgression is a whole composite of images taken from animations, taken from a dancing Minnie Mouse, this fake bottom that you can see in those images, which is gradually things are being pulled out of it. And in the same way that Fabienne was asking, where do these images come from and where do they go, she's asking, what's happened to these objects? Where have they come from? Why are they now appearing out of a bottom? What's eaten them that they're there in the first place? And then in the far corner, John Waters, Dorothy Malone's collar. And STURTEVANT and John Waters have sort of had conversations and get on very well in thinking and talking about the way that imagery and the sort of heritage of the kind of the language of their works sort of combine and have sort of overlapping interests. And the Dorothy Malone's collar is a series of there's 3 photographs and then 3 very, very short clips of the actress Dorothy Malone doing variously melodramatic faces, not speaking but responding to other actors on screen, so they've been cropped out. The sex dolls, which are proving popular and shocking, I think, by equal turns at the gallery. We had a great conversation about this during the installation when I explained to her that I had to produce the caption and was trying to work out for myself how best to describe the material, and ended up Googling sex dolls online, which brought up some interesting results. But the her explanation of them, apart from, and the main thing again was this humorous how to shock the viewer into a different response and a different understanding of what it is that they're looking at, was she said, well, if you really want to get conceptual, is that the use of objects like sex dolls is the ultimate distancing of self from self. So instead of engaging and almost analysing the self, it was turning outwards without attempting to find a depth of meaning either in yourself or in another human being. And that's what she saw the presence of this kind of sex dolls or sex toys as having within society. Sorry, just waiting for the next one to load. While it does, the last image and the last work in the show that I have yet to mention is The Finite Infinite, which inspired Gustave for his talk at the beginning, which is this looped image of a dog running endlessly. It's an incredibly short clip, but it just appears, moves across the surface of the wall, across the screen, and disappears again. And both the title of the work and the structure of it, which becomes incredibly hypnotic, kind of sums up the entire show and sums up many of the concerns that she's had throughout her career, which is the issue about repetition, about recurrence, about authorship and originality, and the sort of icon of the dog and the emblem of the dog. It's almost like an Ouroboros, this idea that an object and an image can continue to reappear and continue to be remade, and is both eating itself and being produced by itself at the same time, endlessly. And the last thing that I was going to make a point about was the sort of the specificity of many of the works in the show. I mentioned at the beginning that the owl wallpaper came about while she was on site. The placement of the sex dolls is very deliberate, that they look out onto the real world outside the gallery, even though they're penned in and hemmed in by the window panes. and the intention is that the sight lines of the people within the gallery and without the gallery looking in become part of the experience of moving around the show. And she's mirrored that on this side of the gallery with dropping these blinds down and then cutting holes in them. So even though she's maintained a relationship with the outside world, when someone like this man is being voyeuristic and trying to see what's inside, very much à la Duchamp, he's seeing the opposite of what he might be seeing on the other side of the gallery, if you follow me. What he ought to be seeing is a sex doll because he's being a voyeur, but he's on the wrong side of the building, so he's missing the point almost. So there's this, and she was very specific that these peepholes had to be present, they had to be part of the way that the whole room was set up. So it was a real privilege to work with someone who is still thinking so critically about her own work, about the reception of the work, and because the viewer is so heavily implicated in the entire purpose of her practice, it became very, very quickly apparent that was always going to be a part of the way that the exhibition was set up. So it was a lot of fun to work on, and I hope that if you haven't seen it already, that you will now go and look around it, and if you have, that I haven't bored you too much. But if you have any questions at all, do ask. We've got microphones.
Okay, maybe we'll have some questions at the end. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Okay.
So while we prepare for Cecile B. Evans,